Welcome everyone to today's webinar on unlocking your employability. Why we are talking about employability and facing your interviews, why is it such a big challenge? So looking at some statistics, we've come across the fact that employability is nothing that one is not educated, and that is why one is unemployable. But a lot has to do with one's skill set in terms of appearing for the interviews and how we prepare for it, how we conduct ourselves, our knowledge, our experience. All of it put together determines whether one aces the interviews or not. So my name is Dr.Aashta Sachdeva. I'm a psychologist and I do HR interviews. And today, through the platform of InterviewBuddy, I have the opportunity of talking to you about how to ace your interviews. So most of us will feel like, the experience that job interviews give us, they are more like, our first dates, wherein we want to create great impression on the presenter or the employer or the potential boss or supervisor. So impression really counts, but it's more like, an awkwardness in the situation. So you do feel a little bizarre in the situation when you are in the interview, and you are also not sure of what is going to happen over a period of time, because the outcomes for the interviews are unpredictable. You don't know whether you will be called, you don't know whether you will ace it. You are saying things, but you really don't know if you are saying them to create a lasting impression on your tentative employer. So all of it put together, a job interview situation ends up being like your first date, where it's a mixture of emotions of excitement and stress, anxiety, as well as happiness of being there and conducting yourself appropriately. So one of the first things that really matters in the interview situation is creating your first impression. Like, we have heard people say that first impression is the last impression. And it really does make a lot of sense in terms of interview situation. So how do interviews get impacted by your first impressions? What exactly are the things that will help you create an impact on your listener or on your potential employer? A big part of it, a big portion of it constitutes of your social skills, as in how you will conduct yourself in that environment where you are, in the presence of maybe an individual who is conducting your interview, or maybe in the presence of a panel that is conducting an interview for you. So you have to see that when you are going to face the interview, it's not about you interacting with an individual. Rather, it's about you interacting with the representative of an organization that you are going to be working at, that you hope or dream to be working at. So keeping all those things in mind, you need to be prepared to create an impression that is going to be a positive first impression and a lasting impression of yours, so that the potential employer really considers you as a tentative employee to have. Now, what are the key concerns or the key aspects of creating your first impression? As Anthony St. Martin says, that your energy is your first impression. It is the foremost perception others will have of you. So when you enter the interview, place where your interview is being conducted, the moment you step into the room or the office where your interview is being conducted, that very moment your impression begins to get formed on the person who's conducting your interview, or the group of people, the panel who's conducting the interview for you. So stepping in confidently, how do you appear to the viewer? Do you appear confident? Is your posture confident enough? It's not too leaning, it's not way too overconfident. Are you able to project an image of yours which is confident, even though deep inside, every interviewer knows that that the person who's coming for interview will be anxious, will be stressed, especially if it is your first interview. If you are a fresher, it's totally okay to be anxious deep inside, but yet the stress plays a positive role by making you prepared, by making you work towards the goals that you are wanting to achieve. So if that amount of stress is going on in your mind, it's perfect, it's fine. So you, despite feeling that stress, despite feeling that anxiety, if you are able to project an image of yours which appears confident, a face that has a smile on it, it is going to create a good positive impression on the interviewer. In addition to having a nice smile and a confident and yet a grounded body posture, it's very important to dress appropriately. Now dressing appropriately is it's very subjective. It varies from organization to organization. So if you're going for a startup versus you're going for an interview in a technical industry with an MNC, an organization which has like existed for historically forever, there is a difference in the way you will see people dressed up over there. So depending upon the kind of organization that you are going for your interview, you need to plan your dress in advance. You need to be sure that you are dressed as per the pedigree of the organization. You are dressed as per the cultural expectation of the organization. So one key aspect of dressing is having decided very much in advance what to wear, so that very morning, that very day, that very moment, you are not spending a lot of time or wasting a lot of time deciding upon the dress, and there are no last minute problems with the dress in terms of if it's unpressed or it's not in its right shape. So just knowing what is industry specific dress and having it in prim and proper shape is important. It's not important to wear very expensive clothes, honestly, when you're going for your interviews. So having decided your dress in advance is the point that I'm trying to make here, and as per the organization where you are going. Now, the moment you enter, the moment you step into the room, so the first things that any observer would see about you are the first three things that I mentioned, like how you appear, how you stand, how you walk into the room, whether you carry a smile on your face, and how you are dressed. Now, after a few moments of having entered into the room, a lot will be about how you greet the person and if you have made it on time for your interview. So this aspect is again a very important aspect. You may enter the room very confidently, but if you're already running late, you may topple over things, you may not see things around because you're already running very anxious because of entering late. So making it in time is important. Knowing the destination where you have to go a little in advance, a day in advance, preparing for you to get there by means of either public transport or cab, knowing how much time it is going to take to get there. Plan your time accordingly so that they feel that you have respect for the component of time. So that's again a very crucial aspect of reaching early, respecting the time of the other person as well as of your own. Then greeting the person, the panel who's sitting there, depending upon the time of the day and the culture of the place, which you'll get a feel of once you get there. You can offer a handshake. Maybe not these days because of coronavirus, it's always better to do like an Indian namaste, but be very professional in greeting your interviewer. That's an aspect that you need to be, you are being observed about, your body language, your initial impression is getting created through your energy, your confidence, and your body language. So make sure you enter the place with a positive energy. You create a good, a great, lasting impression, the first impression on your prospective employer. So the points in the first part that I have covered so far, yes, dressing appropriately as per the place that you are going to, reaching early, have respect for the time, greet respectfully, and appear confident. The next set of skills that I'm going to be talking about is communication. Now, communication is a skill that works for those who work at it. Some of us are inborn, inherently great communicators. Some people really know how to cast an impression by speaking the right words, by telling their part of the story very nicely. However, communication is not a skill that cannot be honed. It's not something that if you do not have inherently, you will never be able to nurture it. So communication works for those who are ready to work at it, and knowing how good or bad you are at your communication will enable you to work towards it, especially for the interview that you are wanting to crack. So you need to know your organization, you need to know the place that you are going at, and as per the knowledge of that industry and place, you need to pick up your language, you need to sometimes pick up the jargons, and you really need to know what words you have to use while speaking to your interviewer. Now, so there are, as we know, two basic parts of communication. One is the verbal communication and the other is the non-verbal communication. Now, verbal communication is your language, is your choice of words, is your ability to use words to convey the message that you wish to convey about yourself. So what you have to speak can be prepared in advance. You can think it over a day or 2 days in advance in terms of what are the aspects of your self that you would like to highlight, what are the points about yourself that you would like to make. So you may need to practice it to become skillful at communication. As I have put it here, if you just communicate, you can get by. But if you communicate skillfully, you can work miracles. So skillful communication, a skill is something which can be developed. A skill is something that a task we have mastered doing. That is skill. Skill is basically being able to do a task with maximum proficiency while making minimum errors. So how do we ace our interviews? How do we make use of our communication skills to ace our interviews? That is by practicing what we need to speak in advance. And knowing who we are talking to, knowing our listener actually enables us to make use of the right words. So if you have some contacts, you have some network in the industry that helps you know about your prospective interviewer in advance, it will help you to prepare better, to know what to speak to him, and there's no harm getting making use of your network to figure out what you need to speak and what that person would appreciate to listen to. So knowing your listener is very important. Then while you speak, that is a verbal part of it, okay? And the verbal part of it must also be very human sensitive. Like we have to be sensitive to the fact that we are not demeaning any race or people of any skin, color, religion, making any racist comments or any political comments which may kind of demean the purpose of what you are there for. So choosing your words wisely while speaking is one important component of your verbal communication. Now, the other thing about verbal communication is your pitch and tone of voice. So, if when you are talking about something that you feel passionate about, the pitch, tone, intonation of your voice may vary, because when you get excited, it may be very high. When you're feeling low on confidence, you may suddenly double down. So you have to ensure that you maintain a consistent pitch and tone, which is respectful towards the listener. Now, the other component of communication is non-verbal skills, or which includes your body language, your posture while you talk, the kind of readiness that you show towards listening to the other person, and the facial expressions you maintain while speaking. So more often than not, even when we are talking to someone over the phone, you would see that we are able to figure out if the person has called us up excitedly, or he's he's talking to us in a sad tone. So you are able to know about the emotions and feelings of an individual just by the way he is either smiling while talking or not, or through his pitch and intonation. So the non-verbal aspect of communication, that is whether you are smiling while talking, whether you are maintaining an eye contact while talking, these aspects are very, very important while communicating your ideas. Then how you sit, how you present yourself while talking is again very important. Like, you should appear confident, but at the same time, it's important that you are not looking very dominating in the environment, because do not forget that you are the one who's gone for the interview, and you are the one who needs that job or wants that job for the experience of being there. So you need to appear confident, you need to appear very sure of what you are speaking, but your posture should not overpower the presence of the interviewer. And one important aspect of communication, other than verbal and non-verbal communication, is listening skills. So are we really there keenly listening to what the interviewer is asking? Sometimes what happens is, the way the question is being put up to us, we do not interpret it in exactly the same way. We do not decode it in exactly the same way as it is being encoded for us. So that is where the message is losing its significance or value. And that may so happen because maybe we are too anxious, maybe we are too stressed, or we are too overwhelmed with what we need to speak or tell the interviewer about ourselves. And that may kind of, because of that, we may misinterpret the question, and we may not be able to answer as per the desired question. So listening keenly, listening inquisitively is very important, because that, not to forget, that will also create an opportunity for us to ask for and cross-question the interviewer later on about his expectations of us in that role, about his expectations from you in terms of the variety of roles and responsibilities that you are expected to fulfill. So, to sum it up, the second point that I was trying to make was the how to nurture your communication skills in an interview by choosing your words wisely, listening keenly, maintaining graceful facial expressions, not having a frown on your face is important, making an eye contact, and maintaining a confident posture while talking. Let's come to the third skill for interview facing, and that is storytelling. Now, you must have seen that that lot of motivators and speakers these days are talking about the art of storytelling. They say that, you know, it's not what you say but how you say that matters. So storytelling is the same art. You know, the moment you create a perspective, a story which is captivating enough, which catches the interest of your listener, it makes him or her more inquisitive about you. That very moment, you know that you have left the interviewer with an idea, with a curiosity about you, and he will definitely call you back for the way you have created your narrative. So here, you're not telling a story about people or about incidents. Here, you're telling a story about yourself. Now, how do you create a story, and how do you tell a story about yourself in your interview? Now, storytelling is done in a way where you are trying to take the listener from point A to point B. So it's a kind of a journey from one to the other point, but when you tell your story, you have not to just end up your story there, you have to create a trajectory that is interesting enough for yourself as well as the listener. Something that enables the listener to learn about you, your skills, and the way you have mastered your skills along the way. So as Seth Godin puts it, marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell. So, hey, you are there in your interview to almost sell yourself, to almost market yourself. And for you to be able to market yourself well, you need to tell a great story about yourself. So when you need to tell a great story, you need to plan in advance of what is it that you would like to tell the interviewer, and what is it that he would be interested to know about you, considering the job responsibility or the job description that you are applying for. So the moment you start thinking your own life and putting it into the perspective of what the role and responsibility of the job requires of you, that very moment you begin to create an impression in the mind of the interviewer that yes, this is the guy I want to hire, or this is the person I want to hire for my position. So, and that will happen successfully only when you plan in advance. What is it? What are the key highlights? What are those experiences that you would like to build upon, that you would like to highlight in your story? So you need to look back at your history. Say if you are a person who's had an experience of 2 to 3 years of working, then you need to think back historically and create a story around the jobs and roles which are similar to the one that you're applying for, the skill set that is required for you to function successfully in the current role, and you need to build your story accordingly. Now, when you need to do that, you have to actually introspect a day in advance. You have to sit back and think that what are the skills that if I mention to the interviewer, he is going to feel impressed that yes, this is what I need in my prospective teammate to have. So think about the strengths that you have, think about your learnings from your experiences, and package them well so that the interviewer is able to maintain his curiosity in you as an individual, in your personality, and in your ability to do the work that you are aiming to do. A lot of times what happens is that people have had some experience, not just the ones who've had experience in job, but even when I've been interviewing freshers for their HR interviews, I felt that the students do have experience in terms of executing certain projects while they are pursuing their masters, or executing their group activities while doing some group projects. But when it comes to articulating it in an impressive manner, some people are not able to self reflect or introspect and come up and package it in a way that they can tell their stories. A lot of times, HR interviews are about asking you to quote an instance from your life about your achievement, quote an instance about your from your career about a failure, quote an instance about what are the learnings from a particular failure, or quote an instance about when did you feel that you worked in your most creative and most passionate manner, like when your passion was being optimized. So when they're asking such questions, they're actually expecting you to answer, to think back, to retrospect, and to answer from your experiences about those particular instances. So while you quote those particular instances of, say, an accomplishment, a failure, or lessons learned from certain failures, you should be able to quote those instances and your learnings from there, and the values that you acquired from there. So they are expecting you to quote those instances. So even if you've not worked earlier, even if you have no history of of work experience, there is definitely a history of you working together in a team in your student life. There's definitely a history of you of working against when you are pressed against time, or facing challenges to meet your goals. So somewhere or the other you will be able to reflect upon your experiences, and you should be able to quote instances from there. And that effective storytelling actually requires you to sit in a state of self introspection and think about the points, put them down on a piece of paper a day in advance, create a trajectory of the historical evolution of you as an individual in the last 1 or 2 years, package it well so that the interviewer is able to understand that yes, these are the experiences that the individual comes with, these are the skill sets that an individual comes with. So he should, a good story should be able to create a very clear picture of the character that one is playing. So when you watch a great movie, you are also able to think about and talk about the characters from that movie. So similarly, a storytelling about your own life is like a movie. It's like creating an impression which which the listener should be able to relate with. So in the previous slide, we've tried to talk about how to create your own stories and how to tell them more effectively. So create a trajectory while telling your story. Customize your story as per the audience. Like sometimes you have to be selective in what you want your audience to hear. So by knowing your employer in advance, you can customize certain experiences that you want to highlight, mine your own experiences, then focus upon the lessons learned. Rather than talking about the failures, you can always highlight that from a particular failure, what are the lessons you have learned, and talk about your creative ideas and contributions that you can offer to the industry, to the employer, or to the organization. This important aspect actually covers mostly everything. Preparation for anything is the key to being perfect at anything, to being able to master any art or any task. So preparation is the short way to success. So even if you feel sometimes that the job description, once you read and you feel that there are skills that you are not great at, you can always look up the job description. You can always sit down and prepare yourself towards answering the questions which may be an important a part of that job description, or an important expectation from you about that job. So there are these certain things that you need to keep in mind while you are preparing for your interview. Now, how do you do that? How do you actually prepare for the interview? Robert Schuller says that spectacular achievement is always preceded by unspectacular preparation. So if you are looking at an opportunity of acing an interview, you definitely need to undergo a spectacular preparation. How do you undergo that spectacular preparation? So I have already shared a few points about how to prepare. One of them being decide in advance, reflect in advance upon the content that you would like to speak, the content that you would like to highlight. So you actually need to, so how do you highlight the content? How do you actually think about? Now, there's the way of traveling back in history, traveling back in time. When you were young, you used to watch those cartoons where, all these characters would travel through their time machines. So you need to kind of sit back and think that how can you travel back in time and see that what are your experiences in history that have led you to this opportunity. So you need to review, it's a kind of a flashback that you need to go back into in your mind. Travel through the jobs that you have done, and historically travel through the experiences that you have had so far. Then you also need to be wary of the purpose of why you are changing your job. These are the questions that you can be definitely prepared in advance to answer. So there are some questions which are short questions in the interviews that the current employer would look for you to answer. So if you are a fresher, definitely your approach to answering those questions would be based on the employer specific approach. It has to be the employer specific approach. It has to be an approach where you talk about that particular organization. So you have done your bit of storytelling, but your bit of storytelling should not project an overconfident you. So now, when you talk about yourself, you also need to align it with the organizational goals that you have gone to for the interview. So read about the organization in advance, know about its senior management in advance, try to get to know about the work culture if you can get an insider view of the organization. There's no harm taking that advantage if you could. Knowing what is it in that organization that will enable me as an individual to grow, to progress, and that will kind of hone my skills also. So your preparation is, as much as it is about you, what to talk about you, the skill set that you need to project. It is also as much about your knowledge of the organization that you are applying at. So your knowledge about the organization would include the mission of the organization, the vision of your seniors or of the current people in the leadership positions, the purpose behind why they are working for what they are working. So the moment you are in alignment with the purpose and the mission and the vision of the organization, that very moment your responses will be carved in the direction to create an impression towards impressing the interviewer. Um, Also try to practice some of the potential questions, like I said, like, why are you changing the current job, or why do you want to work with us, or what are the skills that you think you will be able to contribute with to the current organization. What are your specific client facing skills, what are so you need to practice some of these answers in advance. And that can be done through by a role play kind of a situation, wherein you can have a friend of yours who could probably act as your interviewer, and you can have him or her ask questions to you, and you can practice answering them. Another way of doing it is telephonically, through somebody. If there is nobody for you to role play, then you can telephonically have a conversation with a senior or with an experienced person. Another way is to get in touch with some seniors in that industry and ask them about the tentative questions that could be asked. And of course, one more way is the platform like this, InterviewBuddy, where you log in, book a session for yourself, and you get a feedback of yours in terms of what things was it that you were lacking, and you can practice based upon the feedback that you receive. So this preparation is an important aspect which will assure you a successful response from the interviewer. Even if it doesn't in the first go, at least facing the interview will kind of help you build the art of developing the skills of answering the questions, of being more prepared, because preparation is nothing but an experience that repeats over time, over and over. So through repetitive experiences, you are able to become better prepared to face a situation. So be prepared in terms of what you need to highlight, the accomplishments that you can highlight of yours, the content about the organization, and package it well enough so that when you talk, it's not just about you, but it is also as much about the organization and the benefits that you can offer with your services to the organization. I did not start with why people get rejected, because I did not want to start on a negative note. But there are some interesting facts that I figured out in the process of preparing to talk with you all about acing the interviews and unlocking your employability quotient, so to say. So some of these facts are very interesting. They said that, and why I covered all the points before, you will now see the reasons for them. So one of the sources from Insider Hub, this source is Insider Hub. So one of the researchers proves that 70% of the people were rejected in their interviews for being dressed in a too trendy manner or too fashionable manner. So, make sure when you are dressing, and that was the first point that I made, that first impressions are made through prim and proper dressing. So make sure that you are dressed industry appropriately, but at the same time not overdressed. Then 67% of the rejections are because people do not make an eye contact. So, as much preparation that you need to do about the content of what you will be talking, you also need to be prepared about how you will present yourself in a non-verbal manner, and like through your body language and your facial expressions. And 55% of rejections happened because of the way people either acted or dressed or walked through the door. So again, you see another aspect, which is an aspect of your non-verbal communication or body language. So looking at these interesting facts, I would say that the 4 points that we have tried to summarize, that is making your lasting first impressions, working upon your communication skills, working upon your storytelling skills, and being prepared are the key points to unlocking your employability. So to sum it up, being prepared, create a lasting impression, nurture your communication skills, tell your story convincingly, know the organization, and practice mock interviews. That's it from my end. For any questions, you can always write to the InterviewBuddy platform, or you could email me at this mail ID.
Ma'am, so we have received few questions while the presentation was going on. So the first question that we received was, how can one improve one's communication skills, especially the English language communications?
All right. So it's an important concern for a lot of us who do not come from an English speaking background. So there are certain courses that one can enroll for in developing basic English speaking skills. And again, like I said, role play, preparation in advance, and reading through the language specific domains, like the structure, knowing the structure of the language is important. So basics are important. So if like your basic grammatical skills is a matter of concern, then definitely one needs to go through a proper course of English training for self-presentation. But like I said, preparation only comes through repetitive experience. So more and more practice, more and more listening activities. These days, a lot of the content is available online for developing listening skills. So listening is a key component of learning something new. An infant learns language only by listening. When we are young, we only pick up our native language by listening to the adults talking in our environment. So practice these listening tasks online. But if you feel that you really need to work upon the structure of your language, then definitely enrolling for a course, a short-term course might help.
Thanks for the answer, ma'am. So the next question is, job seekers are typically asked about their strengths and weaknesses in an interview. So how do they answer these questions, and especially their weaknesses, if any?
So yeah, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and let's be very honest that no interviewer is expecting you or any interviewee to be a perfect human being. All we need to do is to know how to package it well. So while it's very easy to think upon certain strengths of ours, it's very, very tough to think upon our own weaknesses and how to project them well. That's the reason I made the point, like preparation in advance. You'll have to really sit through a process of self introspection and list down the weaknesses that you think. So maybe the weaknesses are not something that you are aware or conscious of. So that is something you can obviously interact with your friends and ask them to help you point out in you, and then think it over and prepare an answer in advance. Like if you are asked about a weakness, you don't think that you are temperamental, say for example, but a friend of yours or a family member of yours knows that you lose your temper very easily. So how you should package it for your interview, if you ask your friends that what are the weaknesses or points that you would not appreciate in you, then and they say it's aggression or it's short temperament, then you have to see how you can, how, where, towards what all things is your temper directed, and you can use it for your benefit by putting it across to your employer that yes, even though I am short tempered, I this is how I express it, and I'm working on expressing it better. So you don't have to like completely polish your weaknesses. You can just present them in a more refined manner, so much so that they understand that yes, you are conscious. They don't want to know of a person who's completely free of weaknesses. They want to know in the interview process is if you are aware of your weaknesses. And the moment you are aware of your weaknesses, they know that you are self-conscientious person. So, and you will be working upon them then.
Uh,
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So there's one more question that came in. The question says, "What are the commonly asked interview questions?"
Yeah. From the perspective of HR interviews, the commonly asked interview questions are like, some of them are one component or one gamut of questions is about your self knowledge, your self awareness of your strengths, weaknesses, your interests, your passions, and things that you consider very threatening in your life and challenging in your life. So they want to know how you are in terms of your awareness of your own strengths and weaknesses. Second thing, the second array of questions would be in the domain of how you have been in dealing with people, so interpersonal skills. So they will frame some questions around these, like they want to know your conflict resolution strategies. They want to know how you deal with people of different personas, different personalities. So their questions will be around that. The third would be, say, around your motivation levels. Like they want to really understand if you are, if your commitment is just, monetary based, or if your commitment is driven by passion, or if your commitment is driven by, it's some other incentives. So again, you can be prepared in advance to answer these questions by thinking through these aspects. So time management, client-facing skills, cooperation, self-knowledge. These are primarily the 4, 5, 6 domains under which questions are asked.
Great, ma'am. So we have been running some polls while the presentation was going on. So one of the polls that we ran was asking the user or asking the attendees what is or what was their biggest challenge, and a majority of the users responded saying that self-introduction happens to be their biggest challenge. So can you answer this particular question?
Sure. Um, See, self-introduction is something like, in each and every, it's not like, just limited to a particular industry. In fact, in each and every industry, this is an important aspect. Now, what in the domain of self we need to be aware of? Like you said already, that there was a question about strengths and weaknesses. These are two major categories about which we need to be aware of. So you can start from talking about your strengths. Then move to talking about your interests. Self introduction should always actually start from the current role and going backwards. So if say you already have an experience and you're currently working, so whatever you are doing in the present, you talk about that and move backwards historically, talking about where you like completed your education from, etc. So that is one aspect of factual information. Second is, like we said, that strengths and weaknesses. Third is your interest areas. They also employers also wish to understand how you make use of your leisure time. In fact, this survey, the statistics that I shared, there was an important statistic which said that some of the rejections happened because employers were following the social media profiles of the employees, and they were quite not impressed with those profiles, and they got rejected because of that. So, how you portray yourself across the various domains needs to be consistent. So you cannot be having a very loud posts on your social media profiles and claiming to be someone else in your interview. So these are the things that, so you start talking about yourself in terms of the facts and figures of what you are doing right now. Then you go ahead and talk about your strengths, and instead of quoting your weaknesses, you can quote the learnings from your weaknesses or from your failures. And you need to talk about your skill set, because they want to ultimately see what value you can add as an individual to their organization.
So I would like to thank all the attendees for joining our webinar. This is the first webinar in our series of webinars that are planned for this year. So just to share some statistics on the audience or the attendees today. So we have participants or users joining in from countries like Germany, then Canada, then USA, then Nigeria, then UAE, and last but not the least, India. So I thank you one and all for joining our webinar, and I thank Dr. Aastha for sharing her time and expertise with you all, and I hope you find this webinar to be useful and helpful, and you try and make good use of all the pointers that are shared. And we would be also sharing a recorded copy of the webinar to all the attendees. And if you're looking for any help with your upcoming job interviews, we can always arrange online practice interviews on the InterviewBuddy platform. And if you specifically want to practice with Dr. Aastha, you can just drop in an email to us, and we would be happy to connect you with Dr. Aastha, and you can always connect with her on the uh, the details shared by Dr. Aastha. So thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Aastha, for sharing your expertise with our users.
Thank you so much, Vipul, and thanks to the Interview Buddy platform, and thank you all the audiences for being wonderful audiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you.